I knew I was in trouble the second Drew Monroe strutted into the all hands like a walking LinkedIn post. Aviators still parked on his forehead, blazer 2 sizes too small. That overconfident grin of a man who thought discovering Slack made him a visionary. "Fresh start," he chirped, like we were launching a wellness retreat instead of maintaining a digital infrastructure that kept 3 state campaigns and a half-dozen government contracts running without imploding. Then he clicked to the next slide, a grotesque Canva collage with too much teal, and dropped the words that made my stomach flip. Agility, speed, modernization. And unfortunately, some roles are legacy baggage. Legacy baggage. That was me. Never mind that I'd spent 9 years turning Halcyon Systems Network from a Frankenstein of patched VPNs into a fully redundant hybrid cloud. Never mind that I'd negotiated the master services agreement with Atlas Grid Technologies, our primary IT vendor, through 3 rounds of red lines, 2 flu outbreaks, and 1 VP who tried to get me fired because I refused to approve a security device that was actually a free iPad for his girlfriend. Never mind that when the servers crashed back in 2018, I worked 29 straight hours in compression socks and a hoodie that said Sisyphus was right. Legacy baggage, huh? I didn't cry. Didn't argue. I just sat there, nodding slowly, memorizing every blink of that smug, startup genius smile. By 10 a.m., my badge was deactivated. No exit interview, no farewell card, not even a cheap bagel. Just 1 email from HR reading, "Please return your laptop in the gray bin by reception. Thanks and best of luck in your future endeavors." The gray bin, for the record, still had a sticker that said, "Recycle old batteries." I went home, opened a beer before noon, and my cat Pixel looked at me like, "Finally got canned for calling Bob an Excel terrorist, huh?" I cracked my knuckles, walked over to the filing cabinet, and pulled out the red folder. The one labeled MSA. Final signed, not V3, not draft, not Bob's version. Final. Section 9. Access Revocation. I'd buried that clause in the appendix like a landmine during negotiations. Fought for it like a mom on Black Friday. It stated, in the event the named administrator is terminated, access to all integrated vendor systems shall be immediately suspended until reinstated by said administrator, or upon execution of Clause 9B, contingent upon full payment of the reinstatement fee. The reinstatement fee? $2.8 million. Who was the named administrator? Yours truly, not shared, not transferable, not Drew's new toy. You'd think a COO with half a brain would have checked that before handing me my walking papers over a lukewarm Starbucks. But Drew was too busy planning his Welcome to Leadership photo shoot in front of the mural that read, "Innovate, integrate, inspire." I didn't leave a warning note, no Slack message, no mic drop, just walked out, let the system hum on autopilot a few more hours because I knew exactly when it would stop, 3 p.m. And no one, not Drew, not legal, not the cheerleaders clapping when he said leaner operations, had a damn clue what was coming. Most people think owning the systems means knowing passwords or ticket queues. Wrong. I owned the logic, the bones, every hierarchy, every conditional override, every shortcut that became permanent because no one ever cleaned it up. I never documented them in Confluence, not because I was cruel, but because no one asked. Until now. That afternoon, while Drew posed with his new nameplate like a toddler with a fake mustache, the heartbeat of Halcyon quietly shifted. Pings began to fail. Tokens stopped refreshing. Backup threads flagged anomalies. Deep inside Atlas Grid's compliance module, a single line updated. Administrator removed. Tick, tick. The boardroom smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Drew, puffed chest and Sharpie in hand, paced in front of a slide that read, "Day 1 is Day 1 in Comic Sans." He actually used Comic Sans. "It's time we streamline," he declared, Get agile. Ditch the dead weight. No one clapped. He smirked anyway. Starting today, we're restructuring ops. Legacy systems will be overhauled. Old methods. Archived. Then he looked straight at me, holding eye contact a second too long. Morgan Hale's position, while foundational in the past, no longer aligns with where Halcyon is headed. Foundational? That's what you call drywall before you bulldoze the house. I didn't flinch. Just took a slow sip of coffee and let the silence crush him. He kept talking, emboldened by the lack of pushback. She'll be transitioning out effective immediately. We thank her for her service. Service? I wasn't a flight attendant. I was the reason payroll didn't implode every other Friday. But I nodded, stood, and left. No sighs, no goodbyes, just dropped my badge in the gray bin. By 10:05 a.m., I was already in the parking lot, the California sun bouncing off the mirrored facade of Halcyon Systems, like the building itself was smirking. I sat behind the wheel of my Prius, keys dangling from my fingers, staring not at my reflection, but at that glass monument of hubris. Inside, I could practically hear them already rerouting access, sending tickets, whispering about redundancy plans. I didn't rush. I knew how this would play out. Somewhere upstairs, some overconfident analyst was already asking the right question. Wait, wasn't Morgan the named administrator on the Atlas Grid contract? And I could picture Drew's blank look, the slow blinks of confusion. He probably thought named administrator was some honorary title, like employee of the month. Within minutes, that same analyst, let's call him Jake, would mention that I'd personally negotiated the deal, that I'd been the one who fought for the clause, that my name, and my name alone, was on every authorization key. But Drew wouldn't believe it. He'd wave his hand and say, "We have sysadmins. I'm not worried." Classic arrogance. Classic Drew. And that was fine by me. Because arrogance is quieter than panic. It lets the countdown tick in peace. When I got home, Pixel was already sitting by the window, tail flicking like a metronome. I popped open another beer, fed her, then opened my personal laptop, the one they didn't know existed. I logged into my mirrored drive, my private insurance policy, built years ago when I realized how fragile trust becomes in corporate ecosystems. There it was, MSA Sol's final signed.pdf. I scrolled to Appendix 4, Section 9, Access and Continuity. The clause stared back at me like an old friend. In the event of involuntary termination of the named administrator, all system access and vendor integrations shall be suspended within 4 hours, unless reinstated by said administrator or by execution of Clause 9b, which requires full payment of the reinstatement fee, $800,000. Indexed. Non-negotiable. That wasn't a typo. I'd fought for those zeros, not out of greed, but out of foresight. I knew someday someone would call what I did paranoia. But paranoia built the walls that held their empire. Meanwhile, across town, Drew was probably charming the board over Cobb salads and sparkling water, talking about innovation and modern culture. He'd use my name as a punchline. We need new blood, not legacy code. And they'd nod, half listening, because that's what people like them do when they think the hard part's over. What none of them realized was that the system wasn't just built by me. It was me. Every cron job, every failover script, every database schema had my fingerprints on it. They thought firing me was a clean break. It wasn't. It was open-heart surgery without anesthesia. By 2:30 p.m., the first cracks began to form. At Atlas Grid Technologies Control Center, a quiet event pinged the dashboard. Administrator removed. The system didn't panic. It didn't freeze. It simply started the 4-hour countdown. At 3:00 p.m., access would fold in on itself like a trap door. I poured a glass of wine, leaned back, and watched the mirrored log refresh every 30 seconds. No alarms yet. just the soft hum of inevitability. I wasn't watching out of spite. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was accountability wrapped in silence. Drew had no clue how deep the dependencies went. The Atlas Grid suite wasn't just plugged into payroll. It was the backbone of Halcyon's CRM, finance tools, vendor authentication, even HR portals. When the cascade began, it would move like dominoes in a hurricane. The only person who could stop it was the same person they'd just escorted out with a half-hearted, "Good luck." At 2:59, I checked the mirrored terminal. Status lights began to blink amber. One by one, system connections entered suspended mode. 300 p.m. hit like a silent detonation. The CRM froze. Sales dashboards went blank. A director trying to approve PTO got booted from the portal so hard her laptop restarted itself. Within minutes, help desk lines lit up like a Christmas parade. "Is this just me?" became "What the hell's going on?" And somewhere, in a boardroom that still smelled of Sharpie fumes and ego, Drew was staring at a blank screen muttering, "It's just a temporary outage." Sure, Drew. Temporary. 4 hours temporary. And every minute of it cost them another $1 they didn't yet realize they owed me. Back at headquarters, chaos was blooming like mold under fluorescent light. The first alerts came from customer success: CRM timeout, client records missing, login loop error. Then payroll stalled, mid-cycle, freezing 2 days before deposits. By 3:12 p.m., every system tethered to Atlas Grid was circling the drain. People thought it was a server hiccup. Then Slack went dark. Ticket queues vanished. Even the door badge readers stopped cooperating, trapping half of marketing in the kitchenette with nothing but cold brew and fear. Drew burst into IT like a hurricane in loafers, waving his iPad. "Get Atlas Grid on the line. Tell them this is unacceptable. Fix it." Mitchell, the IT director barely 6 months in, obeyed. He dialed the vendor's 24/7 compliance number. 2 minutes later, his face drained to chalk. They said, "Section 9 of the Master Services Agreement. Administrative access can only be reinstated by the named administrator or through execution of Clause 9b. He swallowed hard, which carries a reinstatement fee of $2.8 million. Drew blinked, certain he'd misheard. "Section what?" 9, Mitchell repeated. "The clause about termination of the named administrator." "Who the hell is the named administrator?" Silence stretched. Mitchell's fingers hovered uselessly above his keyboard, because the shared drive that held the contracts was offline too. Someone squeaked, "Legal?" They summoned legal like priests to an exorcism. Vanessa, junior counsel barely out of law school but apparently the only person left who printed things, arrived clutching a hard-copy binder labeled Halcyon Atlas Grid MSA Final. She flipped to the appendix, scanning. "Section 9A, she read aloud. "In the event of involuntary termination of the named administrator, all vendor-controlled access shall be suspended unless reauthorized by said administrator or by execution of Clause 9b. Drew cut her off. "We know that part. Who's the administrator?" Vanessa turned the page, finger tracing the text. "Morgan Hale." The room went dead silent. Somewhere, an HVAC vent clicked. Drew's jaw worked uselessly. "She's the only one?" Vanessa nodded. "Yes, not shared, not transferable. Her credentials are sole and primary, and she's been gone for—" Mitchell checked his watch. 5 hours. Drew's complexion shifted from executive tan to panic purple. He spun toward the door like he could outrun a clause. "Get me legal again. Get me— Hell, get anyone who can override this." Vanessa, pale but steady, shook her head. "There is no override. The vendor is bound by contract. They won't talk to anyone except Morgan." Someone from HR tried to slip out quietly. The door lock chirped and refused to open. Poetic. Meanwhile, I sat cross-legged on my couch, Pixel sprawled beside me like a judgmental supervisor. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. General Counsel, Halcyon Systems. Urgent, please call. I didn't. I poured another glass of wine instead. They weren't just locked out. They were quarantined. Every system, email, client dashboards, financials, frozen like an unpaid Netflix account. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I'd just let the rules run as written. By 5 p.m., Drew had transformed the break room into a war room. Whiteboards covered in nonsense arrows, half-eaten fruit trays melting under fluorescent heat. Brandon, the new tech director with more buzzwords than experience, was pounding at his laptop. "We could spoof her credentials," he mumbled. "Generate synthetic tokens." "Stop!" Drew barked. "Just stop!" He rubbed his temples. "We'll pay the fee." Vanessa blinked. "You can't. Clause 9b requires Morgan's signature to execute the reinstatement process. Without her consent, the payment can't be processed." Drew stared like she'd spoken in tongues. "So what do we do?" Vanessa closed the binder softly. "You call her." And that's when the board smelled blood. The CFO, Julia Chen, razor-sharp and merciless, sent a single-line email to the C-suite. Confirm projected losses if access not restored by Kaobi Friday. My name didn't appear, but I was suddenly everywhere. The ghost in every meeting, the firewall with a pulse. At 6:08 p.m., my inbox pinged again. "Hi Morgan, hope you're doing well. We'd love to discuss a potential path forward. Could we schedule a brief call tonight or tomorrow morning? Signed, Daniel Crane, General Counsel." No apology, no accountability. Just corporate desperation in polite font. I closed the tab and let them sweat. If you've ever been tossed out like expired yogurt and then begged to fix the fridge, you know the pleasure of silence. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just done being the quiet backbone everyone ignored until the spine snapped. So I did what any rational person with a decade of buried documentation and a cat named Pixel would do. I called my lawyer. Not a random one either. My lawyer, Sierra Vargas, Harvard-educated, ex-tech litigation specialist, calm as still water, but with eyes that could cut through titanium contracts. I told her everything. The MSA clause, the named admin designation, the 2.8 mem reinstatement fee, the company's current implosion, all of it. She didn't even blink. "We're not fixing it," she said flatly. "We're negotiating it." Sierra drafted a document so precise it might as well have come with its own scalpel. Reinstatement contingent upon a consulting retainer at triple my previous salary. Equity in all future modernization initiatives, and exclusive administrative authority for 36 months. Irrevocable. Plus, the right to build my own infrastructure team, independent of Drew and the executive suite. She didn't ask if I was comfortable with that level of audacity. She simply said, "You want to go back to being a line item, or you want to be the clause they never forget?" For the first time in a long time, I smiled. While Halcyon scrambled in darkness, their ops crippled and their help desk on fire, I printed the proposal, signed in blue ink, and slid it into an envelope marked Terms of Resurrection. Then I waited. No need to rush. Time was already on my side. Across town, the second emergency board meeting materialized like a funeral that nobody wanted to plan. Every executive dialed in, ties loosened, faces drawn, caffeine levels toxic. The founder, predictably, was on a meditation retreat in Colorado, which everyone knew was code for hiding in Aspen. The conference room looked like a battlefield of blinking projectors and half-dead laptops looping the same frozen dashboard. On the whiteboard, someone had scrawled "Fix it" in red marker 3 times. Drew stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up like a politician trying to cosplay leadership, but even he knew the performance was collapsing. Julia Chen, the CFO, finally broke the silence. She was small, composed, and terrifying. "Why?" she asked slowly. Did you terminate the one person explicitly named in a binding vendor contract as the system administrator? The question sliced through the room. Drew stammered. Legal didn't brief me on that clause. Vanessa from legal looked like she'd been slapped. Did you ask? Julia pressed. Drew opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Tom, one of the board members known for mismatched socks and inappropriate wisdom, muttered. Morgan warned us about this exact scenario. Every quarterly review. Heads nodded. The quiet was heavier than shame. Julia didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She slid a folder across the table. Best case scenario, 3 weeks to rebuild with a new admin. Worst case? Months. Estimated client losses between 6 and 10 million. Drew's face went pale. Can't we just pay the vendor? He asked weakly. Vanessa shook her head. Only if Clause 9B is executed, which still requires Morgan's authorization. Atlas Grid escalated the issue. They won't move until she signs off. Daniel, the general counsel, cleared his throat. We've emailed her. No response. Julia's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Then you'd better pray she answers. At 3:47 p.m., Vanessa's phone buzzed. Anonymous email. Subject line, terms of reinstatement. She read silently for almost a full minute before turning her laptop toward Julia. One by one, every head leaned in. The document was short, surgical, brutal. Reinstatement contingent on 3 conditions. Consultant agreement at 3x salary, equity in all modernization initiatives, and irrevocable administrative control for 36 months. Deadline, 4:59 p.m., Friday. No signature, no logo. But everyone in the room knew whose hands had written it. Drew exhaled through his nose like a bull. She's holding the company hostage. Julia didn't even look at him. No. You handed her the keys. She's just locking the door behind her. No one argued. Not yet. They were still calculating, wondering if paying me off was cheaper than rebuilding from ashes. Spoiler, it wasn't. And while they debated the cost of arrogance, I sat at home, sipping mint tea, watching Pixel chase a crumpled receipt across the carpet, waiting for the panic to ripen. By Thursday morning, the board's panic had turned into something quieter, meaner, resigned desperation. When my phone finally rang, I didn't even need to check the caller ID. Sierra lifted an eyebrow from across my kitchen table. Ready to talk to your ghosts? She asked. I took a sip of coffee, exhaled slowly, and hit accept. The call began like every corporate crisis meeting. Awkward throat clearing, people pretending not to be sweating through $1,000 shirts. Little rectangles blinked to life on the screen. Julia from her office, Vanessa flanked by 2 overworked attorneys, a few board members with blurred backgrounds to hide their panic. And of course, Drew, already there, trying to look casual, but his eyes were 2 ticking clocks. Julia started first. Morgan, thank you for taking the time. Her voice was polite, but it trembled at the edges. We reviewed your proposal. Before we proceed, can you confirm that system access will be reinstated upon execution of the terms? I nodded once. Yes. But let's be clear. This isn't a rehiring. It's a realignment. You could almost hear the boardroom swallow. You have 2 choices, I continued, my tone steady, deliberate. Option 1. Pay Atlas Grid $2.8 million to trigger Clause 9B. You'll then need to rebuild your entire infrastructure from scratch. Recertify every environment, reassign credentials, and explain to your clients why their systems were offline for nearly a week. You might be functional again by Q2 if you're lucky. Silence. Option 2, I said, is my proposal. Accept it, and I'll restore access within the hour. Drew leaned forward, his voice sharp. This is extortion. I met his eyes through the webcam. No, Drew. This is accountability. He snorted. You're exploiting a company you claim to care about. I'm protecting it, I said evenly, from leadership that almost dismantled it with a single ignorant decision. Julia raised a hand, stopping him from interrupting again. Let her finish, she said quietly. I did. Triple my previous salary. Consultant status, not employee. Paid monthly. Equity in every future modernization deal Halcyon executes, internal or client-facing. My own team, selected and managed by me, answerable directly to the board, not to the executive suite. And my administrative authority remains locked for 36 months, irrevocable. Someone scribbled furiously on a notepad. Another cleared his throat. Vanessa spoke next, her voice cautious. Legally, there's nothing exploitative about the terms. Unorthodox, yes. Unethical? No. She's within her rights. Drew slammed his mug off camera. You can't let her own the systems. I didn't blink. You don't own something you can't operate. I leaned forward. I'm not asking for control. I'm demanding respect. For the years I spent building what you treated like a toy. Julia took a slow breath. I support the proposal, she said finally. I recommend a vote. Drew's mouth fell open. This sets a dangerous precedent, he barked. I smiled faintly, firing the keystone and expecting the arch to stand. That's the dangerous precedent. One by one, hands raised in favor. The motion carried. Drew didn't vote. He just sat there, jaw locked, watching his empire slip through his fingers. I waited until the official record was read aloud. Then I reached for the envelope already signed in blue ink, the one Sierra had labeled Terms of Resurrection. I'll submit the reinstatement token once I receive the countersignature, I said. Julia nodded. By when? 4:59 p.m. tomorrow. No extensions. Drew's nostrils flared. You were never a team player, Morgan. I didn't flinch. I was the team's backbone. You just never looked at the spine until it snapped. Then I ended the call. No goodbye, no pleasantries. Just a click and silence. Across town, the war room erupted into chaos again, but I didn't see it. I was already in motion, preparing the final script, the single authentication key that would resurrect everything they thought they could own without me. Pixel purred from her perch on the windowsill as I slid the signed agreement into a folder marked Final. I'd just written my own job description, and for once, I wasn't the one waiting for approval. Friday morning arrived like a hangover the entire company shared. Drew's last play was desperation disguised as strategy. At 7:11 a.m., Tech Ledger Weekly dropped a headline he'd leaked himself. Former IT director holds Halcyon Systems hostage. Consulting deal tied to 2.8 mem. Lockout. It was accompanied by the world's least flattering photo of me, mid-blink, holding a plastic wine glass at the last office holiday party. Classic smear attempt. He thought the article would turn me into the villain. Instead, it turned him into a punchline. Within an hour, hashtags like Halcyon Meltdown and Morgan Claus were trending on X. Clients flooded inboxes demanding explanations. Investors panicked. Someone in PR tried to draft an official response, but with internal emails still frozen, they resorted to sending it through MailChimp. MailChimp, for a multi-million-dollar tech firm. If irony were currency, they could have paid the reinstatement fee twice. By mid-morning, the real bomb dropped. A former vendor, Carmen Rios from Phoenix Soft, posted on LinkedIn. I don't usually comment, but watching this is painful. Morgan Hale didn't hold Halcyon hostage. She held it together for years. Every flaw we flagged, she fixed. Every crisis they caused, she cleaned up. You fired the foundation and then complained the house collapsed. Within 3 hours, it had 50,000 reactions and was quoted by half the tech press. By the time Sierra texted me, "You're officially trending," I was already making another cup of tea. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Vindication isn't loud. It's quiet and efficient, like a system reboot clicking back to life. Inside Halcyon's headquarters, the mood had shifted from chaos to full corporate dread. Power was still flickering in certain wings, routers coughing, database mirrors syncing in loops. At noon, the board reconvened, smaller this time, quieter. Drew sat at the head of the table, looking like someone who'd aged 5 years overnight. His tie was gone, his voice hoarse. That's when the founder finally appeared, via video from a wood-paneled lodge somewhere in Colorado. Fireplace behind him, latte in hand, the man radiated disappointment. "Explain," he said flatly. Drew started his speech, the same buzzwords he'd recycled since day one. "We were modernizing, streamlining operations. Morgan wasn't aligned with the new vision." The founder cut him off. "I trusted you to lead, not to detonate." Drew blinked. "Sir, I didn't know about the clause." "That's not an excuse," the founder snapped. "That's an admission." The silence that followed could have rebooted a data center. He leaned forward. "Morgan built this company's nervous system. You fired the heartbeat and expected the body to move. No one dared breathe. Then, cold as a verdict, the founder said, "Bring her back, or resign." Drew froze. "Excuse me? You heard me?" the founder said. "And if you choose the second option, clean out your desk before the call ends." Drew opened his mouth, then closed it. The decision had already been made for him. Julia simply folded her hands, expression unreadable. Vanessa from legal scribbled a note. Nobody defended him, not even Brandon, the tech director, who looked seconds from a breakdown. At 1:42 p.m., I received the official email. "Agreement approved. Countersignature in motion. Can you confirm token transmission by end of day?" I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I opened the small folder on my desktop labeled Switch. Inside was the authentication script I'd written years ago. A clean, silent command that would reauthorize every Atlas Grid integration across Halcyon in under 30 seconds. I stared at the line of code for a while, tracing it like poetry. Pixel jumped into my lap, purring. She had no idea her human was about to restart an empire. By 4:30 p.m., my inbox was vibrating. Emails, texts, Slack pings I technically shouldn't even still receive. Legal was panicking. Operations was praying. Drew was probably hyperventilating somewhere. At 4:51, one last message arrived. "Just checking. Everything ready for 4:59? I let it sit. Then, at 4:58 and 37 seconds, I attached the signed agreement, typed one sentence. "Nice doing business with you," and hit send. 4:59 p.m. Friday. No cinematic soundtrack, no triumphant typing montage, just the quiet whir of my old laptop fan and the soft hum of inevitability. I pressed enter. The secure token injected through Atlas Grid's API, threading itself into Halcyon's frozen infrastructure like a pulse back into a stopped heart. Within seconds, the mirrored dashboard on my screen began to bloom green. Access reauthorized, permissions reinstated. The company's digital organs woke up one by one. Email servers online, payroll queues restored, client dashboards repopulating. The first Outlook notification chimed like a church bell for the resurrected. Ding, then another. Ding, ding. Across town in the boardroom, I imagined the air shifting, the gasp, the exhale, the disbelief. Someone must have whispered, "It's back." And for the first time in days, the monitors flickered alive. Projectors glowed, charts repainted themselves, network status climbed from red to green. Vanessa from legal held up her phone, reading the alert aloud. Access confirmed. The sound that followed wasn't cheering. It was relief, the kind you only hear after narrowly avoiding disaster. Drew stood frozen, staring at the returning data like it was a ghost walking out of the grave he dug. The founder's face appeared on the screen again, eyes hard, voice steady. "Read it," he ordered. Julia, composed as ever, unfolded the fresh contract printed minutes earlier. Her voice didn't waver as she read aloud. Named Administrator, Morgan R. Hale. Authority irrevocable for 36 months. No alteration, transfer, or override without written consent of the administrator. She looked up. Clause in effect as of timestamp execution. The words hung in the air like law. Drew tried to protest. "We still have options, fallback servers, legal workarounds." The founder cut him off, colder than ice. "Your fresh start ends now." No shouting followed. No HR escort, no performative exit. Just silence heavy enough to crush an ego flat. Drew's face drained of color. He sat down slowly, the weight of arrogance catching up to gravity. Vanessa quietly began packing her notes. Julia closed her laptop, efficient as ever. Someone at the far end of the table murmured, "She really did it." I didn't log in right away. I waited. Let the systems breathe, let the data sink, let the hum of restoration fill the building before touching a key. When I finally did, the dashboard greeted me with 3 simple words. "Welcome back, Administrator." The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. I leaned back in my chair, tea still warm beside me, Pixel asleep on the windowsill. On my screen, reports scrolled, server uptimes, transaction queues, client reconnections. Everything was stabilizing. No errors, no noise, just balance. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Revenge isn't about fireworks. It's about precision, about writing rules so cleanly that justice executes itself. They thought I crashed the system. I hadn't. I just let their decisions run their natural course. You can't fire the architect and expect the house to keep standing. You can't label the backbone as legacy baggage and wonder why the body collapses. That night, Halcyon Systems came back online in full. Payroll released. Clients cheered. Investors exhaled. The board issued a carefully worded statement about restored stability and renewed leadership alignment. No mention of me, of course, but the ones who mattered knew. I'd already received a dozen quiet messages from engineers, analysts, even interns. "Thank you. We knew you had it handled." Sierra called as I was closing my laptop. "They signed every line," she said, voice low but pleased. "Full compensation wired Monday. You own them. Legally, not emotionally." I laughed softly. "I don't want to own them. I just want them to remember who built the system." "Oh, they will," she said. "You're a clause now, Morgan." When the call ended, I looked at the blinking status panel one last time. Everything green, balanced, alive. Pixel stretched, flicked her tail, and yawned. "We did all right," I murmured. The house was quiet except for the low purr of a server rack I kept running in the corner. A relic of the system that once defined me. I turned off the desk lamp, letting the room fall into a soft blue glow. I wasn't their administrator anymore. I was their precedent. And somewhere, buried deep in the contracts they'd never again skim, my name waited, untransferable, unrevocable, and untouchable.